In case you missed it, 24/7 Sports got exclusive early access to EA Sports College Football, and our experts played the game and have all the hints. So if you haven't cracked it open yet, head over to 247sports.com for more on how to play with FSU. Now, the real-life Seminoles still trying to recover from the catastrophe of going undefeated in 2023, yet being snubbed out of the Final Four in the college football playoff. The Noles went 13-0, including 3 wins against ranked teams and an ACC championship title against Louisville. So with that, we bring in our FSU Brendan Sonnone. Brendan, I don't know about you, but all the FSU fans in my life have not gotten over the snub from last season. So how is the team moving on from that drama?
Yes, same here. Just got a text from a buddy a little while ago. Said he watched all the 2023 condensed games today, which is an interesting practice to do on a July afternoon, and it still hurt for him. So yes, it's still a thing around Florida State, around Tallahassee. Imagine that'll kind of linger for quite some time. Now, in regards to the football program, it's interesting. It's this balancing act, it's a dynamic that's going to be kind of fascinating to follow, because Mike Norvell, whole tenor of his program is built on being genuine and real and authentic. That's part of his pitching, his sales pitches to recruits. When he calls someone a real one, that's the highest compliment he can give a player. And when the snub happened, he was pretty clear that that is a thing that can stick with players for a while, that it was okay to be angry with it, because that's a real response, to be disappointed, to be genuinely hurt by what happened and the opportunity that you did not have, that you felt like you had earned. But that being said, you have to move forward as well. You can't dwell on it. And that's the balancing act that Mike Norvell and the Florida State program kind of have to strike this season. You had ACC Media Days, Josh Farmer said he was angry still at what had happened. Darius Washington said, though, it wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about proving themselves right and validating what they knew they did last year. FSU returns about 70 to 75 players from last year's team. Yes, they lose Jordan Travis. They lose Jared Verse. A lot of focal main pieces of that team, but the guys on that roster, don't forget what happened. Just can't dwell on it. I think, Grace, what'll help FSU is they have a nice influx of incoming talent in the transfer portal. About 10 or so players will be starters or major contributors for them from the portal, and guys like DJ Uiagalelei, Malik Benson, Roydell Williams, all coming from pretty good programs that had success last season, and kind of bring in some, a little bit of a fresh perspective, if you will, to kind of help you move things along a little bit.
Okay, so sounds like a healthy processing is going on. Looking at the field, though, biggest position they have to replace is Jordan Travis. And the coaching staff looked at other quarterbacks, but there's a reason why they went with DJU in the transfer portal. So what do they expect to get out of him in his 5th season?
The thing I find interesting about DJ Uiagalelei is the public perception of him nationally, I think, is really baked into what he was expected to be as a number 1 overall recruit, as a 5-star prospect when he went to Clemson, and then what he did as a true freshman in the 2020 game against Notre Dame as a true freshman, and then the drop off in 2021 where he was put in as a starter behind or in place of Trevor Lawrence, and it just didn't go well. The 2022 season for him wasn't inefficient by any means. It was actually pretty solid at Clemson. Then he ended up going to Oregon State and was really solid there last year too. It was probably one of the top 20, 25 most efficient quarterbacks last year in a variety of metrics. And then the film kind of matches that too. So you have 2 really solid seasons. He doesn't really turn the ball over a ton. I think you know what you're getting in DJ Uiagalelei of your Florida State. And that was part of the appeal of recruiting him when they started to look at the idea of going into the transfer portal for a quarterback to replace Jordan Travis. Really, the only 2 names we ever heard for them were either Cam Ward or DJ Uiagalelei. Cam Ward wanted to kind of go through a process of seeing what happened with the NFL draft, and FSU wanted to move along pretty quickly and have a quarterback in place for spring ball and even during the January recruiting cycle. So with that in mind, DJ Uiagalelei brings a lot of stability because of what he's done in 3 years as a starter, but the last 2 being pretty solid ones. He's won at a pretty high level. He's done well in 2 very different types of schemes, and that gives FSU a lot of confidence in what he'll be able to do in Tallahassee. The main things he'll be able to do, I think, is push the ball downfield. He still has a giant arm. He's able to get the ball downfield vertically. FSU surrounded him with a lot of speed, and he could run the ball effectively too. This isn't some fleet of foot, lightning fast running quarterback, but he's 250 pounds. He's a bit of a tank. had a source tell me when they first brought him in, yeah, we won't ever really not convert on 4th and 1 if we want to go with the quarterback sneak. And the stats kind of bear that out over his career. So you have some elements to his game to build on. You've added a supporting cast to kind of help supplement what he does well. And I think FSU's optimistic about what he brings. Again, the key word for me with DJ Uiagalelei, stability.
That's true. On the other side of the ball, this defense ranked top 20 last year in opponents scoring allowed, but that unit lost 5 players to the NFL draft. So how do they effectively replace some of that star power?
Yeah, not going to be easy. Jared Verses don't grow on trees. Him and Braden Fisk are now teammates for the Los Angeles Rams. Both were top 50 draft picks. Then you lose 2 starters in the secondary, Bernardo Green, Jarian Jones, who were 2nd and 3rd round picks, I believe. And then a handful of other starters and contributors as well, all ACC. Linebacker Kalen DeLoach, Tatum Bethune was drafted. There's a lot to replace there. Not going to be easy. It's going to be an interesting blend of some homegrown talent, right? You have Josh Farmer, who I mentioned earlier at defensive tackle. He was an all ACC caliber defensive tackle, despite playing most of last year, at least half of it with a hand injury that really limited him. Pat Payton's getting all ACC buzz at defensive end. It's a really good group of defensive ends in the ACC this year, so we'll see if he ends up being like a preseason all ACC guy. But he's being considered as like a top 50 NFL draft pick going into this year. So you have some really good pieces on the defensive line that you return. DJ Lundy's a very solid linebacker. Shaheem Brown was an all-conference safety. And then Fentrell Cypress and Azaria Thomas are really good cornerbacks. They both put together pretty good springs. Really solid preseason camp so far, just 2 days in for Florida State. And both those guys will probably be playing on Sunday. So that's kind of your nucleus of what you bring back. And then you have to supplement it, again, probably with the transfer portal. FSU's done that as well as anyone in the country over the last few years. Marvin Jones Jr. is a defensive end transfer from Georgia. His dad was a legacy at Florida State. He was a former 5-star recruit. They weren't entirely sure if he was going to be more of a situational guy when he first came in or if he could push to be a starter. He was awesome in the spring, so the expectations for him are really high, and for him and Pat Payton to be a good 1-2 punch. And then behind those two, they have Sonnone Lolohea, who was an all Pac-12 second-team member. So that's the kind of depth I think they think they have. Daryl Jackson was not able to play most of last season due to an NCAA ruling on transfers, which has since been changed. That seems to happen a lot to Florida State. And Daryl Jackson they think really highly of as just this massive 6'6", 330-pound defensive tackle. Was actually high school teammates with Josh Farmer, so those two get to reunite, maybe cause havoc for the Seminoles. So blend of transfer portals, some new additions, along with guys that you've been developing and have kind of integrated into like more substantial roles over the last few years. They're really confident what they have on defense this year, despite of what they lost last season.
Obviously, the path to the playoff a lot easier this year with the expanded 12-team field. And despite the turnover on the roster, Florida State is still the favorite to win the ACC. But what do you think constitutes a successful season for Mike Norvell in 2024?
I think Vegas has Florida State. Last I checked at 9.5 wins. And that feels like right to me. I don't know if this team, going into last year, I thought it was going to be probably a 10, 11 win team. They exceeded expectations in the regular season to win 12 games. And then obviously the ACC championship game. So you knew so much of what you had. Jordan Travis and a lot of the other returning pieces. It was a like commodity, like proven commodity-based offense, and even the defense too had a lot of knowns, and some guys ended up elevating and stepping up and ascending. This year, a lot more unknowns. There's more variables to me. It makes me a little uneasy to say that this is going to be a likely double-digit win team. With that being said, it's a really talented team. It is. They've assembled a really good group, again, through development and then transfer portal supplementation. It's been really good for FSU, that formula, and the baseline of like high school talent they're recruiting is starting to get better as well. So with all that being said, like this is a group that FSU feels like is legitimately faster and bigger and stronger than it was last year. I think that's coach speak. Like they have GPS testing and whatnot to back that up. It's just a matter like, is it as experienced? Is it all going to be as cohesive as it was last year? And that's the variable grace. Like I'm not entirely confident in saying that I think you're definitely a double-digit win season. But if you're able to push that range, get to 9 or 10 wins, if you're able to beat Florida and beat Miami, and Mike Norvell has done that at a really high level. I think he's 5-1 in the last 3 seasons against the rivals. Both those coaches are kind of on the ropes a little bit. Like if you're able to do that and be in the conversation for a playoff spot with, to me, it kind of feels like a reload / rebuild kind of in between year. I think that'd be a really good step in showing that this is a very stable program that Mike Norvell has built. I would consider that excessive. You can get to 9 and 10 wins with wins over rivals.
Okay, an intriguing season ahead for the Noles. And Brendan Sonnone with the latest from Tallahassee. Thanks so much for joining us. For more of Brendan's work and the rest of our Noles team, check out Noles247.com. They got you covered with everything FSU football and recruiting. That's Noles247.com.